Nice. Makes me feel like we're floating through space.
One of my teammates found virtual makeup on Snap camera. So she's like, I just stopped wearing eyeliner and I just have it virtual. So that's kind of amazing.
Nice. Modern problems require modern solutions. About that, we only have Jane till 7:30. So as I'm fixing my camera battery here, I'm going to turn it over to Jane here to tell you guys a little bit about what she does.
Hi guys, my name is Jane Cowles and I am an artist and I'm also an attorney that focuses on business and art. So I've been an attorney for the last 15 years and like Brandon is talking about different deals when you're working with galleries and what you know what you're getting into, I'm kind of here to help you negotiate the deal, see what contracts you need, and make sure that you're getting into a really good relationship that's a good fit for you, and also making sure that you're protected, that you're going to get whatever revenues are due to you, royalties are due to you, your artwork is used how you want it, not in ways that you didn't intend. So that's some of the things that I work on in addition to various other copyright issues, business issues as well. And I sit on the board of a couple art organizations. I'm outside of the city. I sit on an arts council board where I actually am the finance director for that. And I also sit on a board for a music conservatory. And in my spare time, I like to do illustrations. So I kind of know about your world too. I've done the whole gallery show. I've done galleries in Chelsea. I've done galleries out here. So I kind of know, I have an inside view into your world and what it means to be negotiating these deals.
Where do you find spare time, Jane? When you said in my free time, I was like, wait, so you're on the board, you're an attorney, you're an artist.
Where do I find spare time? Everyone says that, but it's funny because I had been practicing for law firms and I started my own private practice in 2020. And I'm like, great time to start a practice in the middle of a pandemic. So I've been getting some interesting cases, not all art related. They're mostly like landlord tenant and some crazy stuff, but it's important to find spare time, and art keeps me sane. So I do.
What sort of pricing is reasonable for hiring an attorney to help with art stuff like contracts? That's for you.
Okay. I think it's all over the map. And I think also that artists who are working with attorneys need to be clear about their budget. And pretty much right off the bat, an attorney will say whether they can work with you or not. I tend to make things a little easier for you guys. You can go to my website and you can say, oh, I need this package of contracts, and you can, buy the package of contracts and work with the templates on your own and try to make that work. Or you can say, hey, like, Jane, I need to work with you for a couple hours. My rate is $200 an hour, but I work with people. If you have a huge project that's ongoing, I'm not going to hit you for every hour. We can decide on a flat fee. And I find that most attorneys will work that way with you. If you do need free legal advice, the Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts in New York City is an amazing resource, and they take on pro bono cases pretty regularly. So if you don't have a budget and you find yourself broke, but someone has scammed you, used your art, or like reneged on a contract, I would definitely check out that organization.
That's very cool. Yeah, I like the packages you offer there, having like a little bundle of, typical things you need for galleries, because sometimes they don't have them. It's like they like a lot of times I've seen artists who go to a gallery, they put their work in a show, there's no like official agreement about anything, and then work gets damaged, work gets lost, and then who's culpable, and what kind of recourse do you have for that? I would say like one of the biggest things I've come across is we have this sometimes we have an adversarial relationship with curators and with gallery spaces. It can be a very emotional thing to be showing your work somewhere and to be putting your work in the care of other people. And one of the biggest tips I have is really just like keep your eyes out for the people that you like working with, and don't burn bridges because something happens. Like I've heard a lot of times an artist would have hung a work and the gallerist or curator maybe moved it, or didn't hang the scheme the right way. And if that happens, you know, you can express how you feel to them, but try your best to just like stay pleasant, stay easy to work with, and just make a mental note and be like, that person's not going to help me out. You know, I don't like working with them, but try not to burn too many bridges that way, because you never know who's going to help you on down the line. You know, and having your own mailing list is actually a really important thing that you should always be doing. You know, because galleries have their own mailing list, right? They're not going to share theirs with you. They're going to promote you through it, but they're not going to give you access to their client list. They're not going to give you access to their mailing list. And essentially that's the meat of what they have to offer, right? So keeping your own records is a really important thing to put on your artist schedule. If you have, like, referring to your old question, like having a practice schedule is very important, but also carving out a few hours every day to just kind of keep your website updated, make sure you have your latest exhibitions listed, and to work on things like your own mailing list and a potential client list. And following up is so important. Like, you know, you always want to be following up with people. If somebody expresses interest in buying your work, I'd say, you know, just keep pinging them every week or so until they give you a no answer. Like, don't be annoying or pushy, but definitely always keep following up. You never know. And show people work. Just send them a message. I have a collector who, when I see work I think he'll like, I just text him, and I don't say, hey, this is this much, you should buy this. I text him a picture of it and I say, well, this is cool, I thought you would like it. And then half the time I sell it to him.
That's great.
Yeah.
I see another question popped up that says, should you first talk to an attorney before you join a gallery? It's always a good idea to run that contract by an attorney, but just a few things to look out for. Most of the time, galleries are going to have a contract that is in their favor. That's why I strongly suggest that you have your terms of what you call your non-negotiables, what you're willing to give up, because galleries can take anywhere up to 40%. If it gets over 50%, that's not cool. Like, I would not. That's how are you going to profit when they're taking most of your profit? You want to see what your responsibilities are. Like, what are they doing for you? Are they providing the marketing for you? Are they paying for a gallery reception for you where they're inviting people who have come to their gallery regularly and they buy artwork? Are they insuring your artwork? Are they going to make sure that you have to be there? Installation terms, as Brandon mentioned, that's so important. Are they going to install it for you? And can you be present and direct them to where you want it installed and how you want it installed? These are all things that you can include in your contract. And to start with, all you have to do is literally have a checklist. Have that checklist that you go through. And then when you look at their contract, you can say, okay, this is not on their contract, and pencil it in. Don't be afraid to, like, say, this is my term. And if they don't work with you, then maybe it's not the right fit. Because down the road, what'll happen is something, you guys will continue to butt heads over the point that is bugging you. Because if you're not happy with the representation, look somewhere else, because there are many galleries that offer many different terms. And some galleries even say, hey, we're not going to take anything, just donate 5-10% to a charity. Some will just say, okay, pay me $200 rent for the month and I'll just keep all the profits yourself. Those are the kind of deals I look for, because even if you get like one of those deals where it costs for the space, go find a corporate sponsor. There's, like, everyone knows someone in their neighborhood that is a large corporation or a big business, and say, hey, like, want to pay for my gallery show? I'll list your business on all of my invitations and on my website and list you as sponsor. I've done that and it's worked for me. In the last 3 or 4 years, for every exhibition I've had, I've never paid for a gallery space.
Yeah, that's really solid advice. Reaching out, you know, you get what you ask for. Like, if you ask, you're never going to get it unless you ask a lot of times. And that's a really important point about sticking up for yourself too. I think of a friend who had actually signed with a gallery, and part of the agreement was that, you know, they had exclusivity with him, so he couldn't show anywhere else as per this contract. And they told him that he was going to be the first show once they opened up their new gallery in Miami. And what happened was that the construction in Miami got delayed, and they weren't able to actually open the gallery on time. But instead of like reaching out or renegotiating the contract with them, he was just getting more and more upset. And I told him, you know, you need to go and ask for what you want. Tell them to let you out of the exclusivity clause until they can, you know, deliver what they've said. And he was like, you think so? You think I should do that? I'm like, absolutely. He did it, and they were happy to oblige him. So it is really important to look out for yourself. How do you go about finding a sponsor? Hitting the pavement, really. Sending emails, you know, like send an email, go into a business. The smaller businesses maybe a good fit, might be more willing. Larger companies in the neighborhood, you know, a lot of people want to support the arts in ways, and I think they can even write some of that off potentially. But it's definitely all about sending mails. Like I got a liquor sponsor for a thing we were doing just by mailing we wanted whiskey specifically because of the content of the presentation. So I just emailed every whiskey distillery in New York, and I actually got a hit back from one of them, and we connected.
That's a great idea, Brandon. What I did is I wanted a champagne sponsor, and I went to the company that I drink regularly, and I said, listen, this is my favorite one. I buy it every week. I always use it. I got one sponsor, and then I just happen to have a friend that owns restaurants. He has a deal with, he has a liquor license. So for him to get like a case of champagne is nothing, and I just list his restaurant. I always start with businesses I use. So everyone has a bank that they use. Like some people might have a financial planner. Some people have a favorite restaurant. I've always started with that. Even a coffee shop. One time I had a coffee shop. They did like home baked cookies and stuff for one of my gallery receptions. So I had all of my food covered from them. I would go with who you know right away.
Yeah, David is asking what the average duration of a contract with a gallery is.
It really depends. I always suggest do not go longer than 1 year to start, and add an option to renew, because in a year, I would even say 6 months, because in that first 6 months, you're going to know whether you can work with these people or you can't. And when you say the duration, be careful whether that's exclusive or non-exclusive. If it's exclusive, I wouldn't go more than 6 months to start with. And I would definitely talk with 2 to 3 other artists who have worked with that gallery to see what sales have been like. Because when you go with exclusive, you're tying yourself up where all of your sales are going to be generated through that one gallery. And you could really, pardon my French, screw yourself financially.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like the exclusivity end of these contracts and the way people work with artists is changing a lot too. You see a lot less of it. You know, it used to be much more where like one gallery had a stable of artists and that's who they worked with and they had exclusive rights with them. And now you're seeing, you know, big names go around to a lot of institutions and a lot of different commercial galleries. Let's see what else we got. What kind of approach would I take following the potential buyers without being too pushy? Definitely the approach you take, the mindset that I come to when I'm following up with potential buyers and sending them is, hey, I'm sharing this with you specific. You know, you're special to me because you expressed an interest in buying a piece, and you know, you don't need to talk money when you're following up. You just want to be sharing with them what you're doing, you know, and just constantly be like kind of reminding them in a way. And I think that is absolutely the best approach, to be showing them new work, to be inviting them to stuff. A lot of times I find that, you know, between a buyer, especially if you don't have a gallery involved, if the gallery is not in the mix, right? It's just you and your buyer. It's a really personal relationship. A lot of buyers want to be friends with their artist. Like I know a guy who won't buy a work until he's had the artist over for dinner. So invite them out for a drink, you know, like you can meet them and have like a social call, give them an opportunity to, you know, to find out more about you and to, you know, express interest in you and what you're doing. So definitely follow up with them from that mindset of like, it's not a hard sell, it's a sharing of what you're working on. And they'll buy it. Like if they see something they really like in a pack of new images, you know, they'll ask you how much it is. And that's when you can start negotiating and stuff.
And I got something for Brett actually. And Brett, you know, remember, think of it, a lot of these things, think of it this way, you know, in all of these negotiations and all of these sort of business interactions, you know, try to take your emotions out of it. You know, ask yourself, if you're trying to sell someone something, you know, what kind of sales pitch would work on you? And it tends to be this very, like Brandon is saying, this very friendly, this very, you know, sort of approachable, like, here's this thing, if you want it, it's here, you know, you don't have to, like, again, a soft touch, always a soft touch. And then, you know, with your gallery agreements and all of your agreements, frankly, you know, that's really just, you know, sit on it for a second, think about it. You know, what are the ways this could go right? And then, very importantly, what are the ways this can go wrong? And how can we avoid that? You know, what misunderstandings can be hit off at the pass, etc.
David's got a question that I think Jane would be great to answer. It says, what are your legal rights to your artwork on the web? What happens when you upload something?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. But first one is, actually, you should have been on my seminar yesterday, copyright law and protecting your work. First thing, copyright disclaimer on your website in the bottom, the footer. It's the little C symbol, all rights reserved to you. That's your work, your rights. You can register your work to have it copyrighted. You can go through the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Or there's another site that many of my clients love, and it's quick and easy, is Copyright Index. I think it's $35 an image or something, and then they can do bulk processing for you as well. My thing is, I know that many of us, and myself included, when I do art shows, we're on a budget. So if you're going to have work that is going to be going into an exhibition, or you're going to be licensing or selling or something where you think that that work could get snagged, then copyright it. Otherwise, just put the copyright disclaimer on your website. You have your work in progress stuff. You can show that it's your work. No one can take it from you. You have rights to it. Just make sure that you have like all rights reserved. And if you share any images in an email, always have a disclaimer at the bottom of your email. This work is copyrightable. It's for your eyes only, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I feel like David might have asked that question because of an experience we had where he found his photo of CBGB on the CBGB's website without any credit. And he was like, oh, I took that photo. You know, what the heck? And he asked me about it, and I said, you know, email them, like reach out and say, hey, look, I need a credit on that. And, you know, they were happy to oblige. They updated it, and they put a watermark on the image, and, you know, gave him a proper credit. But if you find your work somewhere, you know, reach out and ask first, because sometimes people will share it, you know, not intending to rip you off or like take credit, but they're just trying to share something they think is cool. So give them the benefit of the doubt when you first reach out. But if they don't respond, then you can start, you know, getting a little bit more litigious.
No, that's actually really good advice. I have something happen to me when I was in high school. I painted all these murals in a summer home that my family owned. And I was just like, I don't know why I was searching for like probably vacation spots. I came across our old summer home, and my murals are there, and they're like being shown like everywhere. And I'm like, I call the site and I'm like, listen, that has got to come down unless you're giving me credit. They took it down, and now I'm in negotiations with them for a settlement because it's the unauthorized use of my work. I'm, you know, they're trying to sell vacation space using my artwork. That's not cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they give you credit? Why not?
I don't know. I think that it's because it's mostly like a real estate website, and they just wanted to sell real estate. They weren't like thinking of it as art. So they took it down. Now I'm just working with their legal department to get a monetary settlement from them.
Yeah.
And speaking of real estate, that's actually a really good opportunity for if you are doing some of this work yourself. Like the whole point about galleries and gallerists and, you know, commercial art dealers is that they're doing all this work for you until you get to a point where one of them is reaching out to you and they want to work with you and your work is desirable. You're going to be doing a lot of this kind of stuff. And you can help yourself by thinking outside the box a little bit. You know, the only place, commercial galleries are not the only place you can show, especially here in Manhattan. We have amazing resources from places like big restaurants and real estate agencies that will lease your work to put it in their commercial spaces. You know, you can even get them to rent it. And sometimes you can do renting, you can like rent your work out for television and film either. So if you think about some alternative venues, like reaching out to a corporate lobby or to a high-end restaurant, I've worked with several real estate developers who have like empty showcase apartments and they need art for them too. Sometimes they will outright buy it. And I thought that was really interesting. There was we had a member of the collective a long time ago who started an art business called our Impact Art, or Impact NYC. The concept was she was going to be like Netflix for fine art. So you pay a small amount of money a month and then you get like rotating art in and out. She ended up changing her business model entirely based on the response she got, which was less people were interested in renting the art, and then she had more commercial clients who were just interested in outright buying it in order to like put in their spaces. So, you know, doing a little footwork and kind of learning how to craft emails and how to approach people the right way. So you're not asking too much. You're just saying, you know, hey, if you have a need for this, this is my work and it is available. Let's talk. Really keeping it simple.
That's great.
Going back to that question about a schedule, one of the things I actually do is I have like a schedule of important people that I want to keep in touch with, like really successful painters or people who are selling like a lot of work in galleries. And I keep a reminder schedule for myself just to reach out to them and say hi, like not even trying to do business, but just being like, how's your dog? You know, like how are things? Like, are you good? Keeping yourself fresh in their mind. How not to act while dealing with the gallery. Difficult. I think there's, you know, it's a double-edged sword here. Like, in one end, we really don't want to be taken advantage of, and you want to be strong and you want to make sure you're standing up for what you need and you're being a really clear communicator. But on the other hand, you know, you don't want to leave a bad impression with the gallery. Like, I've had several artists who I like their work okay, and they were just giving me such a headache for the actual like hanging of the show. It was a group show. I do think knowing if you're involved in the installation is very important, especially if it's a solo show. If it's not a solo show and you're in a group show, I think it's not really worth worrying about. You let the curators hang it how they want because it's a group show. And imagine you have 20 artists in a show and all of them are there. I've done that. I've had that experience where I had like 10 artists who were all showing and I decided, hey, let's see if they want to come help hang it. It was a nightmare. Everybody was fighting over spaces. Everybody was being so difficult. It was like, the last thing I want to do now is have artists here while we hang the show. Like, I really don't want to do that. So, you know, being easy to work with, but also communicating clearly what you need out of it, you know, is probably the best way to be.
Yep. In the chat, I just put a link to my website, and on that website, you can see the contract packages as well as I have a blog. So if you need to know more about copyright or non-disclosure agreements or what you need to know when you're getting into like an artist-gallery relationship, you can kind of follow my blog. Every once in a while, I post stuff, and always feel free to like email me if you have a question. I can blog about it because, you know, I'm always looking for topics, and then you can get a response that way.
See, is getting trademarks something I should delegate to an attorney?
Yes and no. Trademark attorneys are typically very, very expensive. You can try to do it yourself. I find that a lot of, you know, the offices are very, very helpful when you're doing this yourself. And there are a lot of great videos out there on YouTube. Just know what you're getting into. If you're going to work on a trademark with an attorney, that's something you need to know the fees up front. Once again, if you don't have the money to afford it, that's something you could reach out to the VLA for, and they might have a pro bono attorney that would take on your case for you.
Yeah, and it does happen, like even on small scales, like, you know, you think you don't need to worry about it. And I had an artist whose pin design got totally ripped off by just like a small, like, middleman between a pin manufacturer and artists. It was called Trippy Pins. And I thought the guy was like not super professional and I didn't want to work with him again anyway. But then I found out afterwards that he had straight up just taken one of the artist's designs from the show he did, and was making more of them than he had been ordered, them, you know, and was producing them himself because they were selling and putting them in shops. So the artist came in and saw their pin design in Spray Ground or whatever, like one of those graffiti shops, and started messaging me because I had been the curator for that project, and being like, hey, what the hell? And I said, hey, that's not okay. Like, let's contact them, ask them to stop. Let's give them, you know, like, here's some resources. If I'd known Jane, I would have sent her over. But at the time, I didn't know her yet. So that sort of thing is, you know, be on the lookout for it, I guess. But, you know, it's hard. You don't want to get paranoid, you know. That can be the case.
I've had a few of those, you know, that I've had to deal with, and usually it's never gone to litigation. It's always a cease and desist. And I try to, like, you know, I usually tell the artist, play dumb, just be like, you know, or at least think that they don't know what they're doing, because people don't like to be accused of deliberately doing it. So I've had them, you know, say like, well, maybe you didn't know that when you change the color to my design and sell it, that's really like still selling my design. And I've settled for, you know, I mean, I had one of my clients, her design was swiped by Target, and they started putting it on, like, you know, when you go into Target and like the little grab things. And they're like, well, they tried to tell her that her pumpkin design, like pumpkins were like a generic image. And I'm like, yeah, pumpkins are a generic image, but it was readily recognizable as my client's style. So they had to hand over some money. Like, Target can't hand over some money.
Right.
Just don't be afraid. Know how to, if it's a big organization, don't be afraid. I mean, they have a legal department. Yeah. And they're going to pay you, because they don't want to hear something on social media that Target stole my design or whatever company stole my design.
Right. It's crazy. I hear a lot of that with Urban Outfitters is like the worst offender. They go on, they actually have like a team of interns, I think, who scour stuff like Etsy and like blogs, and then snag cool designs and just straight up print it. They were so egregious that one time they actually copied an artist's text, like their copy about the design, off their website. and then they've got a huge legal department, so they're hard to go up against, and they actually do that a lot. So it's like, yeah, the artist designed for a necklace, and literally the text they had written about it was both on Urban Outfitters, and they were not getting paid at all for it. So they had to take them to court and settle, of course. But it can be daunting, which is why having you know, official attorneys and people who do this for a living is good to know. So I'm glad we could bring Jane here today.
That's why I encourage all of you, like, be proactive beforehand. Use a non-disclosure agreement. When you're entering into a deal with a gallery, you're going to license your work, whatever you're going to do, whoever manufactures it, make them sign a non-disclosure. If they don't want to sign a non-disclosure, there's something sketchy about that. If they're into a deal with you and they're going to be printing, let's say, t-shirts for you, they're making money. Like, why should they care? Unless they're going to use it for something, make them sign it. And really, the email disclaimer, I mean, they're in the legal profession, they say, does it hold, does it not hold? My theory is that if you aren't taking steps to prove that you protect your artwork, how are you going to explain to a judge that someone nagged your artwork if you aren't even, like, you know, keeping record of who you've sent your artwork to? Has there been a disclaimer on it? Do you have a copyright notice? Are you actively, like, aware of, like, who's reposting your stuff on Instagram and Facebook and not tagging you? You should never be afraid to post. If someone reposts your stuff and doesn't tag you, just send them an email and say, like, you know, thank you for sharing my work. Could you please give me credit? And most of the time they're embarrassed and they'll give you credit. And if they don't, they'll just be like, look, that's really not cool. We're a community here, and give me credit or take it down.
As a photographer, do I have to copyright my photographs even though I own the negatives? I have the negatives?
I would copyright them, and there is a procedure with the Copyright Office that if you have created them in the same year, you can copyright in bulk. You can copyright up to 750 images in one fell swoop. I'll send you the link I'll put the link to that video of how to do it in the chat, because someone just sent that to me and I was like, that is really cool.
I like that.
Yeah, we only have Jane for like about 15 more minutes or so, guys. So if you have any more legal questions, now's the time. Gallery life under COVID.
Yeah, gallery life under COVID. That is interesting. What has happened is a lot of galleries are trying to go virtual now. So you may be into something and now you've paid for, like, a gallery and to represent you and you're not getting what you bargained for, you have a couple options. Look in the clause and see what the cancellation is. I would definitely get out of it, or if they won't let you cancel, argue for part of your fees back because you aren't getting everything you bargained for. And also, how are they going to promote you with these virtual shows? Because I've been a part of some of these virtual shows, and some of them are great, some of them aren't so great. But I wouldn't be paying for a virtual show at this point unless it's like a full-on agency representation, which is a totally different deal. Like someone's going to be sending your work out to a mailing list of clients. That's a different animal. But if it's just a virtual show, get out of that contract if you can and schedule it for when this craziness is over.
Yeah, and I would say even as a general rule, like I don't hold true to this hardcore every single time, but you really shouldn't be paying to show your work. Like if you're paying fees to be in a gallery show, if you're paying fees, could you check my camera? Is Connor over there? Anyway, so if you're paying fees to be in a show, you can take a logical conclusion that if they're collecting money from all the artists involved in the show, if you're paying like $300 to be put up for, a month in a gallery and there's 50 other artists in the show, you can presume they're all paying $300. Where's the incentive for them to sell your work? When I say I don't always, hold to the don't pay to show practice, what I mean is sometimes there are submission fees for things that actually are good for you, like a $34, fee to submit to some contest where, you're going to get actually some recognition in the right place. But one thing you have to really be careful of is getting trapped into this cycle of paying to show, and you're paying to show at all these places that are known for being a place you pay to show. So when somebody who understands how that works sees your resume and sees your showing history, and it's all just like, lists of places that you had to pay to get into, it doesn't make you look great. And it can actually end up hurting you in the long run if your history as showing as an artist is all just opportunities that flattered you, got you to pay your money, and you were hoping you were going to sell something there. If they're really going to sell your work, they're going to take a 50% cut or 40% cut, and they're going to not ask you to do anything. So also think about that. Like, is this an opportunity that's open to the public that everybody has seen? That they're trolling through the large swaths of artists trying to see who's going to give them money, or are they being selective with who they're showing? Like, you actually have to apply and be accepted to be able to start an expense account with us here, because we want to make sure that the shows we do are of a good quality and that they don't have that reputation,
Okay. I see there's another, here, what are your rights if the artwork gets damaged, and should we have insurance? Insurance, most of you probably have either renters. I don't know how many of you own homes or homeowners. I'm sorry, my dog is barking at the moment. He's a 6-pound Dachshund, and he's got quite the set of vocal cords. I would see what riders are available are on your renter's insurance or your homeowner's insurance. Typically, they allow you to put a rider on for a certain amount of time and then take it off. If you can see if the gallery has insurance and they will cover you, that's always something to try to bargain for. In terms of the only thing you would have to worry about then is transporting it to the gallery and back from the gallery. So if you're shipping work, usually if you use FedEx or UPS, they would have insurance on that there. Let me just say, yeah, home ownership in this economy. Yeah, I live outside of the city, so it's another thing. If your artwork gets damaged during the show, do not sign a waiver to the gallery in any kind of contract that they are not responsible for damage. They are responsible for damage. I had a situation where I had a client and they shipped work to California to be shown in an exhibition, and they were supposed to like market it also through virtual stuff. And then when he wanted his work back because he had a potential buyer, the gallery owner was like, "Oh, we don't have the work anymore." And he's like, "What do you mean you don't have the work?" "Well, it arrived damaged." "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And then she's like, "I'm just going to dispose of the artwork." I said, "No, you had to write her a letter. I'm like, you can't just dispose of my client's artwork. If he wants his artwork in 1,000,000 pieces, he has a right to get it back. So I argued back and forth with her for a while, and he got his work back that was damaged. And I'll tell you the reason why you want the damaged work back. Plus, he got a settlement from her. He called me last week on another matter and said, you know, Jane, thank you so much for getting me the damaged artwork back. As it turned out, I was able to break down the damaged artwork, reconstruct it into another piece, and that piece took first prize, which was a $500 cash prize on another show. So he was able to use all the materials, whereas if she had just put it in a trash can, that would have been
Yeah.
cool. Because many of us use artwork and it's really expensive. He uses like metal and different types of wood, and he weaves it into these beautiful sculptures where it doesn't matter if it's half damaged, bent, he can then weave it into another sculpture and use it. Another thing on that note, never have a gallery dispose of your artwork. If you can't stand it and you want to dispose of it, dispose it on your own. Always get it back. It looks like you don't value your art when you don't like say, oh, that's okay, just keep it or whatever. If you're going to tell them to keep it, tell them to donate it to a charity, give it to a underprivileged buyer, act like you're being generous and get a receipt for a tax deduction, but never just say, oh, just toss it.
Hey, that's a good tip for sure. I like that a lot. And, be careful where you're showing. Like, I've had a lot of artists who I've worked with who put their work in big events that are big, like music and art, kind of things. And like, those are the ones where your work's probably going to get damaged. Like, what is the focus of this event? Is this event an art show primarily, or is it like a social event with music and dim lights? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had friends who put work in a show where, the lighting's terrible because it's all about the music or the DJ, and they just want art there, but they don't know how to show art. They don't know how to take care of it. And the place is full of drunk people who are like dancing around and smashing into things. So you can also protect your work by literally physically protecting it. Have frames, work in standard sizes. Like the way I save money for framing and stuff is I have like a set of frames that are all in standard sizes, and I use them over and over again. Like the work is stored inside my bed and it's all loose and like under paper, and then like come out and put it in a frame, and then I take that frame, show it. If it sells, I either charge them extra for the frame or I just take it out of the frame for them, and I can reuse those. And it's definitely prevented. When I showed a couple coffee shops, I got my frames back with some gross coffee stains on the glass and not my art. So
oh, that's actually a really good point. For those of you, we're talking about like the shipping of art and the protection of art. Whatever you ship, always make sure there's at minimum 2 inches of padding on every side. So if you're FedExing the art, make sure it has at least 2 inches of bubble wrap on each side. So if the thing is 2 inches thick, it needs to go in a 6-inch box so that when the FedEx guy drops it from a height of 6 feet onto a concrete slab, which will happen, it doesn't break. And then you can also, in that same way, you should, when possible, get plastic glazed frames as opposed to glass frames, because plastic frames will be both lighter, therefore easier and cheaper to ship, and less likely to break both in transit and at the gallery.
Very good point.
yeah.
Plastic frames.
Another thing that you can do is if you notice, like if you're going to show at a restaurant or a coffee shop, which is my least favorite place to show, but sometimes you do get sales. I always offer them at the end, knowing it's going to have grease stains or something. I give them like a bulk discount just because I really, like at that point, I've priced my work in such a way that I have enough of a markup on it and I can make them feel good and I can move a whole bunch of stuff and I don't get dinged frames back. And I'm just like, it's out. Also, if a restaurant wants to show your work, try to like get them to buy it. I mean, they're buying cheap decor from you. Even offer, say like, hey, listen, if we work out a deal, I'll work out a bulk deal with you. I'll customize a couple pieces. Just do something like that. Try to get out of those situations like coffee shops, bars, restaurants, where everything's going to get like hit by drunk people and splashed with like pancake grease or coffee.
Right. Put it in the right restaurants and stuff here. It's a good idea, but in the one where you got a lot of traffic and elbows, that's not so great. But there are, I've actually had a lot of artists who had really good responses from showing in a restaurant. In fact, one of them actually got signed to an actual commercial gallery because the gallerist actually walked into that restaurant that they go to all the time and saw it. So it can happen. I've actually made a lot of sales through coffee shops that I used to work at. I hung my own work up in the other locations, and so it can be, depends on your price ranging. Obviously, if you're selling work for what you should be getting it for, it's probably not going to go out of a coffee shop. But if you're doing smaller work that's cheaper and easier to produce, I sold a lot of work in coffee shops in a range of about $150 to $300 for small, like low effort pieces that I liked a lot. And, that was a good chunk of change for me at the time I needed it. But that brings us to a good point that everybody always wants to know about, which is pricing your work. How do you price it? How do you determine the value of your art? Jane, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have like I can give my whole spiel, and if you want another time, I can come on for you guys. I have a whole like seminar that I do on it. But just real quick, I always say, make sure you're keeping track of your cost of materials all the time. I mean, have a stopwatch next to you. How long does it take you to make that piece? If you work large scale, know how long you can work per square inch too, because then you can just multiply it out. I would say mark it up 2.5 times your cost, and like the cost of your time and materials. And that way, like if you have to discount it, you can, but I don't recommend discounting because it just doesn't do the artist community a nice thing. And once you discount it, you ruin your sales record. So just like you have gallery exhibitions, keep a log of what your selling price is. Because if you've been selling for $5,000, let's just say, and then you mark your one piece down to $1,000, there's your new sales price, like $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wonderful. Try not to do that. Personally, I have a once a year sale that comes at Christmas and the holiday times. It's the only time I offer a sale. Look at comparables. So everyone knows who their competition is. How is the person who creates art that's very similar to you? How are they pricing their work? Try not to outprice yourself because people like to shop around. And if it's cheaper somewhere else and people aren't like really, they know about art, but they don't understand the pricing, don't outprice your competitor. It's just never going to be a good thing. Just know your market, do your research, and keep track of your cost of materials.
Mm-hmm. And also keep an eye out if you're producing a lot, if you're actually producing as much as you should be, which is a lot. Making the work is the most important. I can talk a little bit about that later. But if you are making a lot of work and you're making reproductions and your work is out there and out of your hands, a lot of times what happens is you'll see your work selling for more than you were charging for it on a secondary market. And as an artist, you don't get any of that money from the secondary market. The only thing you get to take away from that secondary market is an increase in your price point and your asking point. So if you make a ton of prints, I think this happened to Wizard Skull recently. Like Wizard Skull realized that he sells his giant paintings for like $1,000, and then he saw a print about this big go for $1,000 on like a different market space. So, it's time for him to raise his prices a little bit. And on that, I know it's a sensitive subject for a lot of artists just starting out because, you're not confident about the value of your work. You don't have any track record yet. There's a lot of things to consider about a lot of people, I've had artists tell me all the time that they don't feel good asking for a lot of money. They feel like greedy, or they feel like they're being pompous or something. And the truth is, it's your original art. Like these are pieces of you. You can find a niche in an affordable art market by making reproductions. That's one of the things we like about the membership here. You tack a little money away. At the end of the year, you've got some money. You can make some reproductions and get your work in the hands of people who only have $20 to $100 to spend on some art to put in their walls. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great. But that's the way you should be looking at it. You should cherish your originals, take better care of them, I see a lot of artists who like will literally like consider their work trash until it's sold. You know, like they're stepping on it and they're like in their studio and they're like, you know, going crazy making all this work. And depends on how your practice is, but I definitely think like she said, cataloging not only your work, where it's going and where your sales are, but cataloging what you have available, getting photos of it, making
Brandon,
sure that you know. Mm-hmm.
Let me pop in there. Yeah, that's the thing.
Sure.
In all of these questions, in all of these transactions, any of these interactions, documentation is always your friend. Like notes about what you spent, notes about what you did, notes about how long it took you. However you need to do that. I don't care if it's Post-it notes. You might want to go a little more streamlined than Post-it notes. But even if it's a you know, just like a little moleskin notebook that like you just wrote down everything you paid for art supplies, that'll help you get a better handle on, you know, the business side of your art. I like spreadsheets because I lose paper. But Google Docs spreadsheets work just fine. And then obviously, you know, on the legal aspect of things, you know, if you have emails that document your, you know, discussions with people to buy things or to not buy things and prices, especially for like contracts and things, you know, you have no leg to stand on unless you have the documentation of what, you know, your agreements were.
That's an excellent point. You have to have that. And also, if you don't have a contract and you have an email trail, you can take that into small claims court, a court of law, and say, hey, like he offered to give me $500. Here's the email. He was going to pay it by PayPal or Venmo, or he was going to Chase pay it and it never happened on this date. Then bingo, you've got that person because they have it in a written communication to you. And that's really all you need. Verbal's never going to do the trick.
Hmm. Yeah, and if it is a friend of yours, you know, one thing I've always learned too is contracts are like, people are like, I don't want to make a friend sign a contract. I'm like, hey, if you want to keep your friends, sign contracts. You know, it's actually, if it is your friend, I think it's more important that you have a contract if you're good friends with them. You know, it's got to be really clear about what everybody's expecting.
Selling originals versus selling prints. Do you have something about that, Brandon, that you want to say?
Yeah, for selling originals versus selling prints, I think that, you know, they're very different businesses. They're very different demographics. Like the people who are going to buy your prints, if you're going to make a lot of money selling a lot of prints, you're reaching out to a wider audience. You know, you're reaching out to people who might be more of your peers or contemporaries, or they might be just, you know, random people on social media. So you're trying to cast a really wide net with print sales, but with original sales, you're trying to start a personal relationship with the buyer, because people who collect artwork, you know, patrons of the art, they often don't, people who are going to spend like $5,000 to $8,000 on an original piece are probably actually going to want more than one piece from you. You know, they're investing in you as a business. You are your own business. You know, you're an entity, and they will do multiple sales. You know, you'll have a collector who buys many of your pieces over time. A lot of artists I know have literally one or two collectors, and they're supporting themselves, you know, entirely off of those like few smaller number of contacts. So when you're selling the originals, I say it's all about quality of your connections. And with prints, it's all about quantity. You know, go ahead and spam it, you know, pay for some advertising, get your print reblogged by people on social media. That's how that's going to happen, you know, as opposed to selling original art. You know, if you can always get your artwork out there to people who, you know, don't have the money for originals, but you can't get your originals back if you sell them for too cheap.
I will say one thing about prints. You can also increase the value of your prints by offering series. So if someone knows that, let's say when you do a print, that you only run 25 of those and you number them. So you put like 1 out of 25, think of like old fashioned lithography and things like that. I tend to number, because I do digital illustration. So most of my work is a series and I only do 12. So 12 of each. After that, it's done. And it's more affordable. But if someone wants to buy it and they say they want that piece, but they don't want it ever to be sold again, they're going to have to pay a premium for that.
Yeah. And sure, like prints can actually fetch a pretty penny. I mean, we're talking like big league stuff here, but, you know, Stick, the artist Stick, who does those like stick figure babies, broke a print sale record with one of his editions going for $25,000 for a print, 1 of 10. You know, so series things are always really important. You know, if you're going to do that route, you're going to have your prints be, you know, number them, make a limited run. There's 150, there's 400 made of this size and, you know, this kind of printing, because you could offer the same image or a similar image in a run of small prints, like you have 8x10s and then another run of bigger ones. Those are different series because they're a different size. But if they're the same size and the same image, you know, keep track of how many you're making. Or you can go like the poster sale route where it's not that, but you know, that's a different market too. There's kind of like 3 levels, right? There's like the merch market, the collector of prints market, and the collector of originals market. And they're all kind of different profiles.
Yep.
I like the idea of keeping a limited series of prints. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and
keep them
once
limited.
again, I think it was Lee who was saying you're going to want to keep your Google Doc or your Google spreadsheet for that, so you know how many you've sold and who they went to and that kind of thing. I would definitely do that.
Yeah. And, you know, watch it's like your followers. Like, you never know when somebody's gonna like spring to buy a painting, right? Like I've been in places where I really didn't have the money. I couldn't afford to work, but I really, really wanted it. I've actually like kept asking the artist about it for like 2 years. Like it can be a really long time for somebody like actually pulls the trigger on you. So, you know, keep them in your list, know who's ever expressed interest, and make sure you're maintaining contact with them of some sort until they say they don't want to anymore, you know? So like they're uninterested, they'll unsubscribe, but otherwise just keep up with them.
That's actually a really good point, because I do have people that are interested in some things. I make jewelry and do illustrations, and sometimes some of my jewelry can be like, you know, $1,000 a piece. Offer payment plans with people, but got a signed contract. Like if someone says, you know, I really can afford it, but like, can I pay over time? So yeah, I just want a deposit of whatever you feel is great, and then just sign an agreement and have them pay over time. That's worked really, really well for me. And that way I make a sale right then and there.
Absolutely. I've been on the other end of that too. I think I just recently finished paying off a $400 drawing from Moscow, you know, and they sent it to me on the stipulation I pay half first. So I paid them half, then they sent it to me, and then, you know, I get to pay them in quarters until it's done. So that's what we agreed with. You know, and I would have been happy to sign an official document if they had one. Instead, it was over Messenger, you know. Use social media, you never know.
And sometimes there are services, like I know if you do retail shopping, there are things like Affirm, and then there are also things like Afterpay. And it's like if you have credit card processing, I know Afterpay, they take a little higher percentage from you. But the thing that's great about Afterpay is, let's say there's a chargeback or there's a dispute, you don't handle any of that stuff. That's Afterpay's problem. You get all of your money up front, and then unless you sell a defective product, that's like a different story. But if someone decides that they're going to cancel their credit card, they're not going to do what they say they're going to do, that's Afterpay's problem, not your problem. So you keep your money and you don't have the legal headache. So that's another thing that you can look into.
Cool.
You guys, if I can add one thing, I do have a link that I can send you that's like a virtual thing. One of my friends, she's a curator, and she runs these things called Inside Small shows that are going on in the tri-state area, and they're cheap to enter. Most of them are even free to enter, and she creates like websites for them. Each one has a website, so it gets your work out there. And the thing is, she takes nothing from it, so you just get your work in it, and then she puts you in touch with the buyer directly.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. Nice. There's a lot of newer models coming out like that, you know.
So I'll post that link in here just in case you're interested.
Oh,
yeah, I wonder if the kind of transition we're seeing has to do with like the information age, you know, and how easy it is for people to get in contact with other people now, which is why you see a lot less of this exclusivity that was before. Like, this is my client, my buyer. Like, they don't know, you know, they come to me only. Like, it's all about trust. Like, the people who I have who are regular buyers, they trust me to know what they like and to show them stuff, and they ask me if there's new stuff, you know, coming out. So it is a really personal relationship, and as an artist, you can do a lot for yourself by doing what the gallery does, just maintaining personal relationships with them. Yes, NYFA classifieds are pretty great. I especially do like the non-application open calls. We actually advertise on NYFA regularly. It's been a really good turnout for quality artists and people who are interested in what we're doing. So I do love NYFA. And we're also really trying to build our member Discord server up to be kind of a private opportunity sharing space. So on the Discord, we have an opportunities like channel. And I'm trying to do my best to sort of vet opportunities I see and post ones that I think are actually worth your time, as opposed to ones that kind of are obvious cash grabs or just don't look good in general.
All right, guys, I'm going to have to hop off in a minute or two, but I have time for one more question. And I did post the link to my website on there, so you can also feel free to send me an email. You can check out my blog. Like I said, recommend blog things. And if you do see like a contract on there that's not listed and you might need a contract, shoot me that email and I'm happy to get you a template in some way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Yeah, we'll see it. I'll push this online at some point. We'll put it on YouTube or something.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. It was so nice to meet.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you for everything.
Have a great night.
You
Good
too.
night.
Bye.